Hi guys, welcome back. I just wanted to give a shout out to all the people who watched my last video. It was my first video ever and it actually did a lot better than I was expecting, and I'm really happy to see that you guys enjoyed the content and that I was able to add something meaningful to say that resonated with you guys. I read every comment and I responded to all of them, and yeah, I really like to hear your guys' stories, so keep that going as much as you guys can. I love to hear what you guys have to say. If you're in a lot of debt right now, I know exactly how it feels. In 2019, I graduated college and started my first full-time job in early 2020. Like a lot of college grads, I had a mountain of student debt, around $50,000 to be exact, and in less than 2 years, it was completely gone. In this video, I want to walk you guys through exactly how I did it, the strategies that worked for me, and some things I wish I had known sooner. Hopefully this can help you save thousands of dollars and possibly years of stress from your life, because it definitely helped me and I'm better off for it. All right, let's take this step by step. Step 1, build a real budget. The first thing I did was make a monthly budget. And this is super important. In this budget, I basically accounted for pretty much everything. I'll throw it on the screen right now to kind of show you the categories that I have. Back then, when I was paying off debt, my budget had a lot less. You really want to basically just account for as much as you can possibly think of when you are creating a budget. You want to minimize surprises and build guardrails and buffers as much as you can so that when you have an emergency, you won't be thrown off track unexpectedly. And it makes it easier to recover, like if you are truly like caught off guard by something. We all know that life happens, cars break, unexpected bills show up. Do your best to try to slightly overestimate things, or like trying to round up on expenses. Like if it's at like $70, try to round up. If it's at like $67 and like something cents, try to round up to 70. Try to give yourself, just that little bit of extra cushion. You'll see that I have stuff like rent, phone, all the essential stuff in green. You don't have to be as detailed as me. I like to separate things by like how important they are, like stuff that I can cut easily. So I kind of have them like laid out in buckets. Stuff that you know that's gonna come up on a recurring basis. Make sure your haircut's in there. Make sure your yearly subscriptions broken down by month are there. Make sure anything, like I have Celsiuses here. I drink so many Celsiuses, like so many. And I make sure I include it here. Protein powder, anything with like a monthly recurring thing or recurring schedule that you know that you're gonna have to pay. Like it's unavoidable, you're gonna have to pay it no matter what. I also leave in some like sinking fund stuff, such as, like you'll see on here, it says amenities. Amenities is basically like anything that you know you're gonna have to pay for, but it's maybe not like on a recurring like monthly schedule, and it's not as like obvious to break down like a subscription. If I have a subscription for, $150 for the year, like I can break that down to how much per month, and then I save that per month, and then I use one lump sum to pay the next year's yearly subscription, that kind of thing. Amenities is more for things like toilet paper, soap, sponges, like little things that you know is not a monthly occurrence necessarily, but you're gonna have to buy like every few months or something. Make sure to include that just so like nothing is really a surprise. I generally try to keep like, I don't know, $50 to $100 to like account for stuff like that. And sometimes you don't even use that like every month. So it just kind of gives you a little bit of space like in your budget to be able to account for things that you don't buy all the time, but like will come up eventually, if that makes sense. At the end of the day, you don't have to account for like every single last dollar down to the penny. Mine looks like it's like accounted for down to the penny. You can't see them, but like some of the totals I have on there are like estimated and slightly overestimated, just so that like I'm able to have that little bit of cushion. I overestimated a lot just so like when I have like that total monthly budget, I know that I'm probably not spending like up to that amount usually, and so I know that I have like a little bit of leeway from how much I have disposable. I might have a little bit more in disposable than I would actually have, and so that way I'm never really caught off guard by anything. Nothing really like jump scares me or anything like that. So just make sure it's as detailed as this. Like maybe yours is very similar to mine, and if you guys want to copy mine as much as possible and take out the stuff that you don't have that's on mine, and add the stuff that you do have that's on yours, feel free to like make it in like a similar vein and think about your budget in a similar vein. Step two, I would say, is to lower, once you have that budget, like kind of see where your current expenses are, right? And start to pick through all of the different line items that you have in your budget and try to lower your monthly expenses as much as you can. Like obviously there's a limit to like how much you're able to do, but try to get it as low as possible and try to just have as much as the essentials. And maybe your essentials are a little bit different. Like maybe a non-negotiable for you is being able to buy a certain amount of clothes per month. Like that's just non-negotiable. Okay, include that in your essentials. That's totally fine. But I would say like this is probably one of the biggest reason, if not the biggest reason I was able to pay off debt so quickly. It wasn't because I had some like incredibly high paying job or anything. Like I was only making about like 45 to 50K at that first job. And this is the same sales job that I talked about in my last video. Go check that out if you're interested to hear that story. The main reason was because for a lot of people, keeping your expenses low is going to be the best method to paying off debt quicker, because that's something much easier to control for you. Like you can cut things at will and just decide not to buy certain things, X, Y, and Z. But it's much more difficult, like especially if you're working like a normal 9 to 5. You technically like don't have control over whether or not you make more money or not. Like I know you do, to a certain degree you do. Like obviously you work harder, you get a raise, blah, blah, blah. You make yourself more important to the company, X, Y, and Z, blah, 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 blah. But like at the end of the day, someone else is still making that decision for you. Like as opposed to like, I don't know, owning your own business or something, and the amount of hours you work kind of directly, or like the way you're able to scale it might directly influence like how much you're able to make X, Y, okay, whatever, you know what I'm saying? But you get the point. But anyways, back to what I was saying. During this time, while I was paying off my debt, I stayed at home with my parents while working. I want to make this clear that like I am incredibly blessed that I was able to stay at home. I have a good relationship with my parents, and they have blessed me with like the ability to take care of me financially, like post college for a limited amount of time, and it really helped me out a lot. But this allowed me to be like the ultra low monthly expense final boss, if you will. My parents kept a roof over my head and kept me well fed through the 2 years that I used to pay off debt. So take my advice with a grain of salt, because I know not everyone will have a situation like this. But if you have that option, or even the option to live with roommates, it will really allow you to attack the debt as aggressive as possible. Trying to find a way to keep expenses low is extremely important. Like you don't need that coffee all the time. You don't need to go out and eat. You don't need a DoorDash all the time. Try to keep it as low as possible. I was really disciplined in that way. Like I've always kind of been like a personal finance bro. So I'm like, yo, I'm not gonna, I guess what I'm trying to say is that like I am a pretty frugal person. So I'm okay with not doing stuff like that, and it doesn't really bother me that much, you know? And keep in mind that during this time, I also was really good with like automatic payments, saving money in my high yield savings account, and making sure that I was putting away enough money to pay the debt off quickly. For me, lowering my expenses made a much bigger difference than trying to make a little more money during this time. For step number 3, I would say it's figuring out your timeline. Like what is your time preference for being able to pay off debt? After I knew my monthly expenses, I figured out exactly how much disposable income I would have at the end of each month after I paid off all my expenses. So I would take all my expenses, I would subtract that from my net paycheck for the month. Included in my monthly expenses too at the time, I almost forgot to say, is I accounted for how much I was willing to put extra into my payments over the minimum to try to attack the principal a little bit more than just paying the minimum and not thinking about it. Make sure that you have that kind of like in the back of your mind, that you know how much your monthly expenses are going to be with your minimum payment plus whatever extra you decide to put towards the principal for the loans that you have. Once I had that figured out, I would take the rest of the disposable income, and I took that number and I basically divided it by the total amount of debt that I had left. That immediately told me approximately how many months it would take to become debt free if I just stayed consistent. Like, obviously, I'm not gonna have that amount of money at the end of every single month, but like that is like the number I knew I could get to at the end of every single month to be able to pay off aggressively towards the debt. The amount of months that it would take to pay off, that kind of became my finish line. Watching the debt shrink every month after that, and being able to save a certain amount of money to put towards the debt was incredibly motivating. For me, the math was roughly 24 months personally, and this is from when I got the job in early 2020, so the math came out to about like early 2022 was when I was ultimately going to be able to pay it off. And I ultimately was able to pay it off in about 18 months actually. So I ended up paying my lump sum payment towards the rest of my debt in August 2021. Next, we're going to go off of kind of the payoff strategy. There are two popular methods when both of these methods are talked about on Dave Ramsey's show. I'm sure a lot of you may have heard of like Dave Ramsey and his personal finance kind of show. Both are very valid. One is more mathematically optimal, and one is more kind of like psychologically, emotionally optimal, if that makes sense. You have to kind of know yourself and which one you would be able to stick to best. There's nothing wrong with either one. There's one that kind of gets you to the finish line faster, in my opinion. But if you're not able to emotionally like handle like seeing the number not go down as fast as you want, and it's gonna make you stop, then the other method is probably better for you. But let's get into each method. The first one is the debt avalanche. The debt avalanche is the mathematically more optimal strategy. This essentially just means you pay off debts with the highest interest first. This is because this debt is going to grow the fastest. And so essentially you want to kind of like attack the fastest growing cancer cells, like quote unquote, first basically. Keep paying the minimum on the lower interest debts. Like obviously you have to service the debt still and pay the minimum interest, but you want to put as much extra money towards the highest interest debts that you can with this strategy. This saves the most money because you're eliminating the debt that's costing you the most every month. It's the most expensive of all the debt. So the faster you can get rid of that, the less it can grow at a crazy rate compared to other debts. With that being said, there is some nuance to this. Like if the smaller interest debt, like let's say for example, it's like way higher, like in terms of like total debt amount, than the higher interest debt, then maybe since like the total amount of raw interest that's being accrued is so high, then maybe you kind of like want to knock off a big chunk of that of the lower interest debt first, and then like switch back to like paying off the higher interest debt at a later point. It really kind of depends on your own situation. Like let's say you have like a really tiny debt, like $1,000, but it's like really high interest, you know what I mean? Versus like $50,000 of a student debt and it's like 8% or something. Like maybe it is in your best interest to like knock out a big chunk of the lower interest debt first, because a larger amount of interest is being accrued. But it's kind of situational. Like you're just going to have to figure that out for yourself, like what makes the most sense for you. But the rule of thumb for this strategy is, higher interest debts get paid off first, and then you just go down the list. If one's at 24%, that one gets knocked out first, then 11%, then 10%, then 7%, XYZ, blah, blah, blah. The second method is the debt snowball. This is the psychologically easier method in theory. Instead of focusing on interest rates, it's really just you pay off the smallest total balance first, no matter what it is. If it's $500, pay it off. If it's $1,000, pay it off. If it's $30,000 and it's smaller than you have like $100,000, then pay that one off first. The whole idea is that you're getting like these psychological wins, right? You're getting a quick win. It's keeping you motivated. You could see you're knocking off one piece of the pie at a time. It's not technically mathematically optimal, but for some people, the issue is really just behavior. For some people, staying motivated is much more important than saving every last dollar of interest. I mean, that's just the truth. Like if you're not going to be able to stay motivated, and then you're going to come off the strategy or like paying off debt in general, then you're just going to end up accruing more interest in the long run anyway. So you have to kind of know which one works best for you. So there's the debt snowball and the debt avalanche. And now I want to go into what I actually did. So personally, I use some version of both. Both of my loans had like a similar interest rate. I think one was like 6%, one was like 7, maybe 8%. And the total amount of debt was like close enough. I think they were both around like in the 20s or 30s or something each, you know? So what I decided to do is I chose to pay more than the minimum towards the highest interest one first. So I chose like basically like a debt avalanche modified. I can't remember if it was like the highest overall debt loan, but that didn't really matter to me. I was gonna take out the highest interest first. I think the minimum payments for both loans combined were about $400 if I'm remembering correctly. What I did is I allocated an extra $350 to the highest interest loan per month. So I'd pay the minimum on the lower interest one, and then I'd pay an extra $350 towards the higher interest loan, so I could attack the principal a little bit faster on that one. At that time, I had a significant amount of disposable income because I was staying at home, like I said before. And what I ended up doing is that with that disposable income, instead of just putting it towards the debt, like all of it, like towards the debt as much as I could every month, I decided to keep that money in a high yield savings account. And it was earning, I think, like 3% interest at the time. And I would just stack that up until the amount that I had in my high yield savings account matched the amount of total debt that I had left at the end of the entire time that I was saving up to pay off for the loan. I think when I got to the end, it was about $42,000 when all was said and done. Basically, I paid off a meaningful amount of principal over time on the highest interest debt and saved the remaining disposable income. And that was just so I could have liquid cash on hand during this time. And at least it was gaining some interest. Like there's something to be said about having like liquidity, like when you need it. And it was really just there in case of an emergency. And if something like had happened during those 18 months, I could tap into that cash on hand right then and there. And then once I got to the end of the 18 months, I just lump summed the remaining balance. It was $42,000, and man, it was like a bittersweet day because it was like, oh, like I was so happy, like I finally got to pay off this debt, you know, blah 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 blah. And then it's like you click like pay, and all your money's gone, and now I'm like starting from square one, like with $0. But you know, at the end of the day, I was so happy to see that number gone. And before we wrap up, you know, I want to leave you guys with a few tips. This might take a little bit longer than, you know, I know I just said wrap up, but I just want to leave you guys with a few tips that either helped me personally or I think can make your debt payoff journey a little bit easier. Tip number 1 is something I'd already said before. Open up a high yield savings account. I mean, this is like the easiest financial upgrades almost anyone can make. Don't leave cash in your standard like Chase or Wells Fargo accounts where the interest is like 0.01. I mean, that's like nothing. A lot of accounts nowadays, you can tap into it very easily. Like transfers happen so quickly that it's almost like they're just like your normal bank. So I don't recommend leaving any money. Well, leave like the minimum amount that you need for like Chase or whatever, like name any big bank. So you have access to those funds like at a moment's notice. Personally, I use Wealthfront. It's like the purple app. The majority of my savings, like my emergency fund, I keep in Wealthfront. I like to be able to separate my money also into like different buckets for like taxes, emergencies, car repairs, like other subscription stuff, like yearly subscriptions I like to keep in there, where like I save a bucket each month into that that's going to pay off like a yearly subscription later on. I'll put it up on the screen so you guys can kind of see like what the features look like. This isn't a sponsor or anything, but they work great for me. I've used them for years at this point, and I have plans, and I don't have plans of switching anytime soon. As a general rule, I'd look for a high yield savings account earning at least 3%. That's kind of like the baseline right now. But right now, like 3% is like the lowest you should be willing to accept. I think Wealthfront is like 3.3% right now, and like SoFi is like about the same. Ally Bank is like similar, I'm sure. There's a bunch of them. Another thing too is like if your debt interest rate is like genuinely like lower than what your savings account, like a high yield savings account, is paying you, like just keep that money liquid. Just keep money in that account, and it'll earn more interest than the interest that's accruing on your actual debt. I mean, but this isn't super common because like there's not very many debts that are like less than 3% interest. So this is kind of like a situational thing. But keep that in mind. The next tip I would say is like consolidating your debt, if that makes sense for you. If you're paying something like 24% interest on a credit card, for example, like you might want to look into taking out a personal loan from a bank or a lender, getting that personal loan at 10%, and you could just get like, let's say you have like $10,000 worth of debt at 24%. You could just go take a personal loan for $10,000 out right now at 10%. And then you use that $10,000 to pay off your credit card that has 24% interest. And now you just have to pay back that same amount at 10% from the bank you just got a personal loan from. That's one way to consolidate your debt. But you can't, like, to be very clear, do not fall into the trap of thinking that this means your debt is paid off. You have not paid off that debt. All you did is trade more expensive debt for like a slightly less expensive debt. It's still expensive. Like 10% is still high. Like I don't want to pay 10% interest on anything. And like I'd never pay interest on anything. So like you don't want to just think that like, oh, I took out this loan and I covered my debts on the credit card. Well, now you own 10% on the loan. So this is like a small win for you, okay? But it's a win, like nonetheless, and that's important. What happens a lot of times is like some people will start spending on that credit card again once they just paid it off. Like, bro, don't do that. Do not do that, okay? Because you're just gonna end up racking up even more debt on that same card. You're gonna like rack up probably close to the same amount. So you just have to be aware that this can happen psychologically, like if you're not being careful and you're not being honest with yourself. Another way to consolidate too is a balance transfer. A balance transfer is like the same idea as like taking out a loan and paying off one debt with a lower interest debt. And it's because a lot of companies will offer like 0% balance transfers for a certain time frame, say like 12 to 24 months. But obviously you have to be careful because as soon as that time limit is up, then you will start owing like the higher like variable credit card rate usually at the end of that promotion. And sometimes they even have the debt accrued in the background during that time. And if you don't pay it all off in time, then they'll hit you with all of that interest all at once at the end of the promotion. So just be very careful. This one is super situational. It's only good if you're planning to pay off a debt in a very short amount of time that you know you can pay off, and in that way it could be very powerful. But obviously just be careful because once that time frame's up, you could screw yourself over or just be back in the same position you were in before. Debt consolidation ultimately only works at the end of the day if you fix the habits that got you into the debt in the first place. Next, I kind of want to go over something that's a little bit more controversial. This is how to handle very low interest debt. I'm saying this like under 5% basically. It can actually make sense to only make the minimum payment. For example, a $10,000 loan at 5% costs roughly $500 a year in interest. For a lot of people, that is very cheap to them. They can service that amount easily. You just have to know your situation. Compare that to a credit card charging 24% on that same 10,000. That's costing you $2,400 a year. Like, I mean, we all know that's almost 5 times as much. Don't do that. You know what I mean? Typically, what people do with very cheap debt like that is they invest the extra money that they would normally put towards the principal, and they would just invest it in like a stock market or a different asset that's going to give them a better return than that, low sub 5% debt. The S&P 500 averages 8 to 12%, which clears 5% by a reasonable amount, So like in a way, investing that money into the stock market at 8 to 12% is a good win. It's a very marginal win, but it's a win nonetheless. A personal example that I have is a loan that I actually took out against a life insurance policy that I've had since I was like a teenager. I started this life insurance policy when I was about 18. The cash value has like a decent amount, and in my head I'm like, I can probably get a better return than like what this life insurance policy is going to give me like over the long run. So what I did is I took out a loan against that life insurance policy, and for life insurance policies, the interest on a loan against it is very, very low. I'm talking about 2.75%. To me, that debt is really, really cheap, and I can easily service the interest payments each year. So I'm like, so what I did is I bought assets with that money, and those assets should far exceed the yearly interest that I'm going to end up paying from that 2.75%. Like I said before, if I invested it all in the S&P 500, I'm going to clear that 2.75% by a lot. That's just an example of how you can view debt. Like, not all debt is bad, and this is like an example of like good debt, quote unquote good debt. None of this is financial advice, by the way. Like, this is just something that I've done personally. I don't necessarily recommend everybody do it, but I have a pretty decent understanding of like investing and how that all works and what assets to put money into. So I did this for my personal situation. But if you're just trying to get out of debt, it's probably don't even think about this yet. Okay, don't even think about this yet. Another little tip is to use like unexpected money wisely. Whenever extra money comes in, I try not to spend all of it. I'm talking about things like you totally don't expect, that you don't account for in your budget, that are just like small bonuses, like a bonus at work, a tax refund, a lot of times, Christmas gifts, if you get any Christmas gifts like that, or birthday gifts or something, months where I receive an extra paycheck. I get paid weekly, so that'd be like a month where I get 5 paychecks. Or if you're like a semi-monthly, or if you're like a bi-weekly paycheck person, sometimes you have months where you get like a 3rd paycheck. For people who are like semi-monthly, who get semi-monthly paychecks, you're just gonna get a big paycheck at the end of a bigger paycheck at the end of like a longer, pay cycle. So it might not be as useful to you, but what I'd say is like what I would do with that money often when I was paying off my debt is I would take like at least half of that and just put it towards the debt, and then the other half of that I would use to treat myself a little bit. Like I'd buy something like, I don't know, some BS like shoes or clothes or a game or something random, something to go out with your boys and do something fun. I would just use that money like half of it usually, because I know some people will tell you to like throw every single dollar, and mathematically that's correct, but like at the end of the day, we're not robots, you guys. Like we're not robots. And so giving yourself a small little reward like once in a while when you're not expecting it, especially when you have it budgeted out correctly, it just makes it easier to stay disciplined over the course of like a year, 2, 3, 4, 5, instead of burning out after, you know, a few months or the first year, because it feels like you have nothing fun or cool to look forward to, you know? At the end of the day, you just have to remember, like, why are you doing this? Like, the biggest thing I learned through this entire process of paying off debt is it's such a mind game. You have to be willing to have some delayed gratification. You're gonna sacrifice today, ideally like the years where you have a lot of energy, a lot of extra energy to spend on other things. You have to be willing to sacrifice today so that your future can be dramatically better down the line. For a while, you know, you're gonna see your friends, maybe they're spending more money than you, they're going on cool stuff. You might have to skip a vacation here or there. You might have to drive an older car. You might have to eat out less. All of that is okay, man. Like, it's okay. You have to know why you're doing it, because eventually something incredible happens. You stop making debt payments, and trust me when I say zero debt in today's world is the new rich. The median non-mortgage debt is $18,762. That's not even like, that's just the median debt that someone has. Like 50% of Americans have more than this, and 50% of Americans have less than this. That's a lot, you know. That's a lot, you know. Like, that's not easy to just pay off for most people, you know. Like, who can just service $18,000 of debt super easily, you know? And that's not even including people who go to school and take out loans for college like me. Your paycheck, like, once you pay off all this stuff, your paycheck starts to belong to you. And despite what people think, a budget is actually freedom. Like, when you have a good budget and you're debt free and you know where your money's going, that is true freedom, bro. Like, you are in the driver's seat of your personal finances. Your stress starts to disappear a little bit more. You don't have to worry about little expenses. Like, I could spend way more money on things that, like, before I would be like, oh, dude, I don't know if I could do that this month. I don't know if I could do this. And this is all just because I paid off debt and I have a good budget. I know where my money's going, and it's all in my head. Like, I understand how it works. And I can honestly tell you from this experience that it's just so much better on the other side. So much better on the other side of paying off the debt and being debt free. You don't have to just be in this cycle. Like, you don't have to be like every other person that you see out there on the streets who oh, you know, like, I have this car payment that I have to blah 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 blah, this and that. Like, it is so much better to be on the other side of this. Like, trust me, man, trust me. And if you're currently trying to pay off any debt, like, please leave a comment below with how much you're working on, how much debt you are working to get through, and what strategy you plan to use. You know, Avalanche, Snowball, some hybrid version that you think works for you. I genuinely love to hear you guys' progress. I like responding to your guys' comments, hearing your guys' stories. It was really nice to see that in the last video. So please don't hesitate to share if you feel comfortable to. If this video helped you or motivated you, please consider subscribing, because this channel is all about making better financial decisions, building wealth, creating long-term financial freedom, and ultimately building the best vision of your life that you see for yourself. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.